That's not funny. I wonder what the crowd is going to be like tonight, though. Well, we put a sign up so that anybody over 60 shouldn't be here. I think that just leaves me and Ryan, right? And Christopher. Zeb. Call this meeting of the City Council to order. Start with a roll call, please. Mayor Weiss. Here. Deputy Mayor Feller. Here. Councilmember Kine. Councilmember Rodriguez. Here. Councilmember Sanchez. Here. Mr. Mullen. Thank you. We'll meet in closed session to discuss the status of negotiations with the Oceanside Firefighters Association and the Oceanside Fire Management Association. Adjourn the closed session.
Is to think about what you, in terms of your exposure to the general public, to think about what it is that you need to do and pretty much limit the things that aren't absolutely necessary. Because that seems to be the population that is the most vulnerable at this time.
So, for example, they're suggesting not going on a cruise.
Right. Oh, definitely not a cruise. Definitely not a cruise. And also they have the other countries that are pretty much in isolation. So you want to pick and choose if you're going to travel. If you need to travel, it's choosing where you go if you need to do that. And definitely if you're over 60, you need to think about it very carefully.
You did indicate that there was one positive test in San Diego County, an individual who lives in San Diego County.
Yes, one person.
And that was detected early enough. You did the sequencing, trying to find out if there were any other potential communications.
Right.
Any kind of touching or anything, and nothing was found, right?
Right. And what I want to say is there's a total of 157 cases in California. So we're really trying to get ahead of this thing and limit the number of cases we have here that are positive.
So if someone does have, seem to have symptoms, what should they do?
Call their doctor. Don't go. Call your doctor. Tell them what you have, and they'll give you direction from there. And depending on your exposure, if you tell them, and if you've been in contact with someone that is being monitored, if you've just come back from a cruise or traveled in that situation, you need to let them know that as well. So don't just tell them you have symptoms. Give them the history in terms of where you've been and what your exposure may be, and then they make the decision whether or not you can be monitored from your home, which is taking your fever and calling in and checking in, or if they actually need to have you come in.
And if someone doesn't have a doctor, doesn't have health insurance, what are they to do?
Call 211 and they will direct them.
211?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All righty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to add that the City of Oceanside, I want to applaud the City of Oceanside, the manager's office for getting a website that's dedicated to the coronavirus. There's a lot of really good information on there. If you go to the City of Oceanside's website, there is a link right on that page that'll take you there. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank the council's indulgence for allowing us to go over the 15 minutes. We'll go to our consent calendar, which are items 3 through 16. Do we have any requests to speak on any items?
On item number 12, we have 6 speakers, but they have indicated that they don't wish to speak if they're the only ones. And they don't wish to have the item pulled if they're the only ones.
Move approval for all of them then.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
So?
We'll go to item 17, which is a general item regarding the adoption of an integrated pest management program and approval of landscape maintenance contracts. Nate the Great. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of City Council, Nathan Mertz, Public Works Division Manager. Tonight before you is a recommendation to adopt an integrated pest management program for parks, beaches, landscape medians, and parkways. Also to approve the Public Works Agreement for parks, beaches, and landscape maintenance services. Spring of 2019, a request for proposal was issued for Parks, Beaches, Landscape Maintenance Services contract. One proposal was received on June 5th, 2019. In June 2019, City Council directed staff to develop an integrated pest management program in collaboration with the Parks and Recreation Commission. On October 8, 2019, the Parks and Recreation Commission recommended approval of an integrated pest management program with minor modifications. Staff then revised the maintenance specifications to allow the contractor to adjust their maintenance proposal to be in line with the integrated pest management program. The purpose of the integrated pest management program is to direct health-conscious and environmentally sensitive pest management strategies on city-owned parks, beaches, improved landscape medians, parkways, and city-owned buildings. It requires city staff and its contractors to focus on the prevention and suppression of pest issues with the least impact on human health, the environment, and non-target organisms. It also outlines how city departments are to perform pest management and to ensure compliance with the city's integrated pest management program. Policy and goals of the integrated pest management program are to protect health, human health, and non-target organisms, actively monitor the presence of pests, apply a tiered approach to pest management, educate staff on pesticide application best management practices, effectively communicate the usage of pesticides through signs, notices, website, and prepare annual reports. If chemical pesticides are used, use EPA-level pesticides in a targeted manner to protect public safety and to prevent threat to native habitats. The IPM uses a tiered approach to pest management. Tier 1 involves cultural, mechanical, environmental, and biological control measures. Tier 2 involves pesticide controls, which is the least preferred option. Pesticides are considered a secondary resort within the city's parks, beaches, and landscape parkways. If pesticides are used, they are to be the least toxic pesticides, meaning they can't be or cannot be known or probable carcinogens, reproductive toxicants, known or probable endocrine disruptors. They need to have a soil half-life of less than 30 days and need to be non-toxic to fish, birds, bees, etc. The annual contract for parks and beaches is for the maintenance of 45 parks and city facilities, including the Civic Center and the City Operations Center. Major scope of work for the contract involves mowing, trimming, cleaning of courts and amenities, trash and debris removal. It's a 2-year public works agreement with 3 one-year options. To be in compliance with the Integrated Pest Management Program criteria and to forego the use of chemical pesticides, additional labor is required in the form of a weed detail crew. Staff has developed 3 options for City Council consideration. Option 1 is adopt the IPM and implement the Integrated Pest Management Program with year-round increased maintenance for a total of $556,000 a year, which is about a $250,000 increase year to year. Benefits of the full implementation includes the elimination of chemical pesticides within turf and planter areas, and thus resulting in a healthy turf and planter area conditions. Option 2 is adopt the Integrated Pest Management Program and implement the Integrated Pest Management Program with 6 months increased maintenance for a total of $430,000 annually. It's about a $125,000 year-to-year increase. Partial IPM implementation includes seasonal weed control, intermittent or seasonal presence of weeds within turf and planter areas. Option 3 is to adopt and implement the IPM with a 3-month increased maintenance mode, which is $368,000 a year, about $62,000 increase year to year. Partial implementation includes limited seasonal weed control and increased seasonal presence of weeds. With that, staff recommends City Council adopt the Integrated Pest Management Program for parks, beaches, and landscape medians and parkways, and to receive direction from City Council on Parks and Beaches Maintenance Agreement option and approve the Public Works Agreement with a corresponding service level. Thank you. Do we have any speakers?
We have 11 speakers on this item. And our first speaker is Marianne Viney, to be followed by Bob Johnson, to be followed by Christine Gorman. As I call your name, please make your way to one of the podiums. Please speak directly into the microphone, and the lights will indicate how much time you have.
Thank you. Good evening, esteemed mayor and council members. My name is Marianne Viney, and I'm here representing Non-Toxic Neighborhoods. Thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight and for all you do for the residents of Oceanside. We support the proposed Organics First IPM Option 1, which is the most cost-effective long-term and is also the most proactive health stance because it restricts the use of all synthetic or chemical pesticides rather than playing whack-a-mole with individual pesticides and banning those because they only come back again later with a slightly different chemical formula that then, can have the same effects or worse. And that, that goes for all classifications of chemicals, including like orthophosphates, orthochlorines, carbamates, pyrethroids, neonicotinoids, and etc. So that is the advice of non-toxic neighborhoods, and that's what looks like is coming through here in this IPM. So non-toxic neighborhoods' goal is to protect children from pesticides where they play and learn. We are happy for the opportunity that we have had to meet with staff, with residents, and also with you, and to have shared our scientific advisors, playbook, our IPM, our organic products, and technology information. We've worked with New York State Senator Hoyneman on state legislation restricting synthetic pesticide chemical use there, and obviously we wanted to bring that to California, so we're very excited to say that we are now working with Assemblymember Bloom of Santa Monica to restrict synthetic pesticide use in California's state public open spaces and also in schools. So this is a beautiful opportunity for Oceanside to get out in front of this. So thankfully, Farmers Footprint and Non-Toxic Neighborhoods have, for the last 4 years, been qualifying organic products and their efficacy, new technology, glyphosate, organic alternatives that get the job done. So I really appreciate everything that you do. I hope that you go for option 1. I think the IPM is really good. And I just want to leave you with 2 thoughts. One is that we are really happy to offer the City of Oceanside our grant for an organic park program. And also leave you with a quote from Dr. Lamphere, who also sent all of you a letter through email. And the quote is, quote, "By allowing children to be exposed to toxins or chemicals of unknown toxicity, we are unwittingly using our children in a massive experiment," unquote. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Bob Johnson. I'm associated with Farmers Footprints. They're out of Encinitas, and Non-Toxic Neighborhoods, which is out of Irvine. First of all, I'd like to congratulate staff for putting together this IPM. We've worked with communities throughout the United States. Actually, we're working with the City of San Diego right now and San Diego Unified School District. We've worked with Carlsbad, many cities in Orange County and school districts, etc. A couple of comments. First of all, I think it's a very good IPM. Certainly, we recommend option 1. Secondly, it's clear in the staff report that it affects all departments in the city. The key on this is that since Public Works is in charge of the IPM. They operate the IPM. That they're looking out for all of your landscape facilities, and so it's really important that it be a citywide effort, not in one department. So I'm assuming that that's what you're doing. The third item I'd like to point out is that in your beginning of your tier 2, that you use certified organic products applications, and so the certifications are through OMRI and through Washington State. They have a Washington State Organic program, and those two have the certified products that they be used before you use any synthetics and any other products if there's a need to do that beyond the mechanical. With that, I'd like to again thank you for consideration of this, and again congratulations, Department.
Christine Gorman, to be followed by Diane Wolke, to be followed by Aaron Kinsberg, to be followed by John Botworth.
Good evening, and thank you very much. I spoke with, I think, every one of you more than a year ago, and I'm so thankful that you listened and you referred this to staff and said that you wanted to hear what Parks and Rec had to say about it, and all that's been done. I think they've done really good research and come up with a really good IPM, and now it's just time to put the finishing touches and put your final stamp of yes on it. I'm really excited to think of what this is going to mean for the PR for our city. I could just see now in a Chamber of Commerce magazine come out with a full center spread with great photos of what Oceanside is doing. And you know, right now, you know that everything is going green, and we don't want greenwashing, we want truly green. And this is the real thing. It's your chance to do something great for the city, you know, to go down in history as somebody who has, you know, left the city a better place, and to do something good for your children, your grandchildren, and even for the workers. These workers now won't be spraying pesticides. They'll be going out and hand-pulling weeds. When they go home and they want to hug their family and their children, they don't have to worry about pesticides on their clothing, getting onto their children, tracking onto their carpets. We don't have to worry about our pets, you know, getting exposed to toxic materials. This will be fantastic for our city. And now it's up to you to put the final stamp on it, and I'm hoping you'll go for option 1, because that's really doing it the right way, where you're going to really see the results. So I'm counting on you, and again, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm Diane Wolke, a retired nurse midwife and public health nurse, and I live here in Oceanside. I agree with all of the prior speakers. I really support option 1. It's a small price to pay for the safety of our community, as well as our environment, and to protect our children in particular, who are the most vulnerable. It's important to ban these pesticides that are particularly carcinogenic or toxic to reproduction of non-target species, you and I, as well as pets, livestock, wild and aquatic life. These pesticides are already finding its way into our drinking water and our food. The fish that you eat tonight may have some of these in them. In particular, neonicotinoids are implicated in the decreasing pollinators around the world. Pollinators include bees, bats, beetles, birds. They're responsible for 75% of our world's food supply and quality, and the EPA states that there is no added benefit to use of neonicotinoids. 0 added benefit. They are also implicated in a lot of human health issues as well. In addition, neonicotinoids is the #1 class of pesticides used in this country. Acetaminoprid is actually the #2 chemical that is most commonly used in the U.S. It's been on the Cal EPA list of carcinogens or reproductive toxic chemicals since 1990. It doesn't make any sense not to include this in a ban. The neonicotinoids have been banned in France completely since 2018, and in the EU, a ban of 3 of them will go into effect next month. Atrazine is banned in 37 countries currently, and it's that's the second most commonly used pesticide in the U.S. It's implicated in reproductive effects as well, including prematurity, low birth weight, very low birth weight, fetal growth restriction, limb reduction, brain development, abdominal wall defects, and breast cancer. Please go with option 1. It's the only thing that makes sense for the health of our community and our planet. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Aaron Kinberg. I'd just like to support option 1 and give you a little quick, short and sweet statement. But essentially, as just kind of going back to the IPM report, PowerPoint, just something I picked off that was how glyphosate was deemed as no known harms or carcinogenic agents. But why should we make our decision off of something that might not have carcinogenic agents? We should wait till there's something we can see confirmation that there is no harmful effects. Not to mention that pesticides do lead to soil. Excuse me? Okay. Pesticides lead to soil degeneration, and I believe that there are other options that we can use. For the past 6 months, I was interning for an organic farm, 2 organic farms, one large scale and one small scale, and we tried not to use, or we used no pesticides, and instead we used alternate methods such as like farmscaping, which is using like different types of plants or water reservoirs to detour pests, which actually keeps the ecosystem of that farm healthy, because it keeps these pests that are contributing to the ecosystem but not affecting what you're growing. Yeah, please go with option 1. Thank you so much for your time.
Good evening. My name is John Butter with Cleaners for Kids. I want to thank you all for considering the IPM. I urge you all to go with option 1. It's definitely the right thing to do to protect our kids. I would ask 2 things to be added to the IPM. 1, extend the IPM to not just city-managed land, but also land leased from the city. So incorporate the requirements for the IPM into that land lease. And the other thing I would ask is that in the IPM it says that pesticides can be approved by the maintenance supervisor or division manager for their area. I would ask that that would actually be moved up to the director of public works or the city manager. That in doing so that they vouch for and document the fact that all other attempts through mechanical environmental controls have been tried, and that this is the last possible way of doing it. And along with that, looking through the staff report, weeds are definitely the #1 pest in Oceanside, and, using pesticides, it talks about budgetary loss or protecting buildings. On that loss, to think about how, weeds are going to damage a building. So I would really expect that pesticide use would be, not used for weeds. There's really no reason other than a state requirement for a compliance requirement to use pesticides. So I definitely urge that to be stronger language in the IPM, and please vote yes on option 1. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Darren Marlowe, to be followed by Suzanne Hume, to be followed by Linda Evanoff.
Hi, my name is Darren. I'm a high school senior, and I'm here with Cleaners for Kids. I'm here to urge you to choose option 1, which uses the least amount of pesticides. Although this comes at an extra cost, it would significantly improve public health and protect kids and future generations from both short-term and long-term health issues. For example, the pesticide 2,4-D, which is currently used in Buchanan Park, can cause coughing, burning, dizziness, and temporary loss of muscle coordination with prolonged oral exposure. Even worse is glyphosate, which is associated with a wide array of health issues, including liver damage and endocrine disruption. While it was mentioned that glyphosate does not contain proven carcinogens, I'd like to point out that the World Health Organization asserts that glyphosate is carcinogenic, and the EPA, who disagrees, has ties with CropLife within its advisory panel. They are the parent company of Monsanto, who created Roundup using glyphosate. The city council was willing to spend millions on synthetic turf, so I don't think it's much to ask for more money to ensure the health and safety of Oceanside residents. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Suzanne Hume. I am the founder and educational director of CleanRaceForKids.org, a nonprofit working to protect children's health, clean air, clean water, and non-toxic lands. So I'm here today to support option 1, absolutely. I agree with what John from Clean Race for Kids has said, that the oversight in escalating to pesticides, the language there must be changed. It can't just be decided by someone doing, an area supervisor that says that it is deemed necessary. That must change because, as it's stated in the IPM, that the number one problem or number one pest in Oceanside is weeds. So I would like to know what constitutes an emergency that puts people at risk. So I myself have been a victim of pesticide poisoning here in Oceanside, California. And as a result of that, thankfully, we met with the County Board of Supervisors and passed a ban on glyphosate last week, and we're working together on a ban or to ban other additional toxic pesticides and working to have a really tight IPM. This is coming. People want it. So this weekend I spent with Darren and other fabulous people for Clean Race for Kids and lots of kids. And we were in Buchanan Park, as Darren said, where 2,4-D is currently used. 2,4-D would not be eliminated as per this IPM. 2,4-D has been implicated in lots of things that you can research and we can talk for days about, including as the water piles, and if dogs are drinking that water, they can have liver failure. Anyway, so as I said, in Buchanan Park, 2,4-D is used. It's a type 3 pesticide classified by the EPA. We know that the EPA does not use the precautionary principle. They don't. And there's a lot of questions about the reasons why things are not ramped up and bumped up to be listed as more problematic when we have lots of the scientists saying that they should be. So we're hopeful that there is a stakeholder committee. There was once a stakeholder committee that was dissolved because I guess through Parks and Rec, the director said we didn't have a second. But there were people meeting and talking about what we should do. We are so appreciative of the staff, and you guys have done just an amazing job, and thank you so much to all of you who are considering this important thing. I agree with what Darren said, especially when city council members are recommending a $14 million synthetic turf cost for 2 parks, Buchanan Park and MLK, be put in at a cost to us that we absolutely disagree with. There is no way that we can overlook spending, a couple $1,000s on option 1. Thank you.
Linda Ivanoff?
I'm Linda Ivanoff. I'm with Sage Environmental Group. We are environmental planners and landscape contractors. I live here in Oceanside. I want to support the IPM plan number 1, and I believe that we should have, a balanced, scientific-driven policy that's not based on fear of certain chemicals, but how it's approached pragmatically. Our company specializes in restoration ecology. So we have soil scientists and plant specialists. We also have an herbicide applicator license, so we do use that at some point. We have now integrated into our program mowing, and we have a new crew of adorable goats that eat the weeds like crazy. So we have been working with Irvine Ranch Conservancy up in Orange County and have put together a data-driven and data collection case study on restoring some land that was degraded with cattle. So that the idea is to get rid of the invasive weeds, and it brings back the good ecology of the property, gets rid of all the mustard on the hill, etc. So that soil scientist and our environmental planner presented this case study at the Cal
and there's a plant council meeting last fall, which documents multiple years of, and with photos and data, the mowing versus the grazing, and how mowing you're doing over and over again, and the grazing is actually helping to regenerate the desired plants and the balance in the soil. So we're looking at that as a very positive. The other is that the animals eat the biomass and take it away, so you're not laying down weed seeds again over and over again and having 4 episodes or more of each season of mowing. So we find that's a really good benefit. We also have been working with Irvine, implementing areas in their open space, fire prevention, defensible space. And just last week, the mayor of Irvine was the first in the nation to promote and implement the non-toxic policy. And the city was just given an award by the Cal EPA last week for the IPM policy that they implemented. And she included that last week in her State of the City address. It's incorporated to the green initiatives. So the grazing has become a really great program for Irvine. We're now implementing it in Laguna Niguel together with mowing and grazing, and it's great for like hilly and slopey areas that are more dangerous to the labor workers. So I appreciate your time, and
Thank you.
I support option 1.
That concludes our speakers. Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you, and I want to thank staff for working with the public for, I think it was over a year, and working with the city council members and also with the Parks and Rec Commission to come up with a strategy that would avoid pesticides and at least avoid chemical pesticides and allow for more organic maintenance of our parks and other landscaping. So I did want to ask a question about that reference to approval. That was, I believe, page 6 of the IPM, proposed IPM, and that's under approval and application of chemical pesticides. Number 1, where it says pesticides shall be approved by the maintenance supervisor and or division manager. Why not just the division manager?
That decision was made to be most flexible. The supervisors are the usual day-to-day managers of these contracts and have the qualifications or the certifications related to pesticides in this case, and would be qualified to make that decision. And this is again just a draft document.
Qualification. So could we have both of theirs so that, I think the idea is to track it. I think that in order to be able to know, because you have a reporting portion in here, which is really good, because I think there was also an issue about how do you get to these reports, you know, what's going on at this, you know, X park, whatever. Would it be able to be and? Because it sounds like the reason why you wanted the maintenance supervisors because they're more qualified to make that decision?
And just, Councilmember Sanchez, sorry. Other than just the decision to make it more flexible for staff to continue with work, but in this particular case, you know, everybody would be involved in this decision because it's not a decision we'd make lightly, because pretty much the only time we would be utilizing chemical pesticides when there would be some sort of issue with public safety or structural issues with a building, you know, and I'm not just talking about weeds, I'm talking about pests like termites or, you know, flood control purposes, items such as that. So
right.
We wanted just the most flexibility, and we're willing to modify this however the council desires.
Okay. And you are going to be reporting on a yearly basis. When such a decision is made, how quickly would you be able to report that out, for example? And what would be the manner in the way that would be reported out?
So the Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Sanchez, the way
the IPM has been structured is that, you know, within the first year, there's a 6-month report provided, and the 6-month report basically goes over what happened during that period, what was used, what issues we saw within our facilities, and that's presented. After that, then we go to
the Parks and Rec Commission.
Yeah, so, and you wouldn't necessarily know that anything is happening other than if you were visiting the site or visiting the city's website to notice that there was a pesticide application in process, or the actual site where we would sign for the actual process. And then at the annual report, we would disclose what was used within any facilities in the park. And this is in line with what Irvine does and Carlsbad does and other cities in the area.
Is there any way to report it out concurrently at the time that kind of a decision is made? Is there someone that would be in charge, you know, who's ever in charge, be it the division manager or the maintenance supervisor? How would that become public?
By posting it on the website and at the facility with signage in terms of a closure of that area, or notifying, you know, users that there was that process taking place and what was going on there. So that would be the essential notification.
The website how would you find that?
That would be located in the Public Works page of the website, and then we would have a notification essentially on our main page of the Public Works website.
Okay. So it's something that someone could easily find.
Yes.
Okay. Well, as I said, I'm really excited that this is before us. I would like to move to option 1. It is an additional $250,000. I think that we have been, you know, we've had public members very anxious about this and their kids, and we had a lot of testimony before from the community, including our kids, and this is something especially important since we do have 45 parks, and this is such an important part of what we do in terms of our public health. So I'm going to move that we go forward with option 1. Thank you.
Councilmember Rodriguez. Quick question. Who currently services the entire city of Oceanside's landscaping and maintenance program now?
Company Executive Landscape of Fallbrook.
And when did that new contract begin, and when does that end?
The contract ended last year in October, and we've been on a month-to-month basis.
Got it. So currently on a month-to-month?
Yeah, currently month-to-month.
When the RFP was sent out, was it just on this pest management, or was it on all services within our city?
The RFP was prepared with kind of 2 functions. One was the historic way of maintaining city parks, and within the RFP there was an additive alternate for an environmentally sensitive maintenance strategy, in which the contractors were to prepare their own kind of maintenance strategy in line with a future IPM, because we had not developed the IPM yet.
So they developed, in essence, what's before us today, is that correct?
It was a lot, well, the one proposal that we had, the company has had no experience with running an organic or non-toxic program. I was a little concerned about that and the lack of scope. And the intent was to bolster that and work with them just to make sure the scope of work was crystal clear on what was going to be required. After that, we had direction to basically develop the IPM, which created a much better scope of work for the contractor to follow, and they understood what they do understanding what they were required to do, and working with them, understanding what the community wanted with the integrated pest management program. And basically the whole goal is to, you know, forego or eliminate the use of chemical pesticides within our facilities, and the main way you do that is with, you know, mechanical means, and you can couple that with other like cultural approaches. So, you know, On the tier 1 methods, it's best to couple a couple methods together to achieve the results.
So you answered my next question, which was, does this vendor do this service with any other jurisdiction? And the answer is obviously no. If they weren't able to put together a viable bid on services they've never performed before, but that we in essence created and retrofitted a program that we're telling them we want done, they're putting a number together that they don't know will suffice or not suffice. I know personally in running and operating a farm, when you go from pesticides to pulling out weeds, the manual labor is 3 to 5-fold, the amount of time and energy. And so I'm really concerned with that and taking on this endeavor and this $500,000, total cost, $250,000 additional cost on option 1, when this is something that a city like Irvine can afford, a city like Laguna Niguel can afford, the city of Oceanside. I would love us to be able to afford an option like this, but I just don't think feasibly we're in a position as a city to spend taxpayer dollars and take from our infrastructure fund when we have roads that need to get repaired, parks that need to get repaired, just a plethora of things that need to get done. So I do not support any of these options. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Feller.
Pardon me. So the increase changes us from using pesticides to pulling weeds by hand, essentially.
Mayor, Deputy Mayor Feller, that's correct.
What eliminates gophers, ground squirrels? They're a pest, I believe.
Mayor, Deputy Mayor Feller, that's correct. You'd be basically trapping, the goal of the IPM is trapping of those pests. Trapping. Which includes live trapping as well.
I'm sorry, now what does that mean? It includes live trapping, or it must be live trapping?
It includes, it's an option for us to use.
Okay. I've walked several fields, Capistrano, North River Road, or Melba Bishop, the baseball fields. There's problems at Sepulveda. There's problems out at Landis. And that's probably more of a danger in my eyes to our children than I think that's the major danger out there, and that it comes with twisted ankles, torn knees. Those things happen all the time, and it's all the fields. Over on Martin Luther King School grounds, the outfield there is not. We use it, but it's not ours to mow. I'm a little concerned that we're spending this extra $250,000 on, or whatever the number was, on the so that we can pull weeds. So I'm going to listen to whatever anybody else has to say, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do at this point.
Councilmember Kine?
Nathan, just a couple quick questions. I think I'm concerned about the price. And number one, I think we all want, pesticide-free fields, but 500 or $500,000, $250,000 for a year for 2 years is a lot to take on right now. For me, it'd just be we have to tolerate more weeds if we go to any of these options and just see how that goes. But I'd like a shorter contract, so if it's something that's not working, we can redo it instead of being stuck for 2 years. Just today on Monday, we had an interesting day financially where a lot of our bonds were called back, and our returns are going to be quite a bit less. And, depending on what happens in the next few months with TRT tax and tourism, we could have a rough year, we might not, but I'm not comfortable with $250,000 a year for weeds. I think if we go to option 3, it has the 3-month crew, correct? Can we spread that 3-month crew out throughout the year just to focus on hotspots with more visibility or that are impacted more? Or do we have to have it a certain, are they going to be March through June, or do they have to do it a week period? I mean, can we do, 2 days here, 3 days there? How could that work?
Our Mayor, Councilmember Kime, we are in full control over this contract with this weed crew. We can direct them to be at any location during any period. Essentially, the way we're viewing this weed crew in the allotted amount of time is an allowance for us to utilize them how we want and attend to. So, when we have only a 3-month allowance with 4 crew staff, we'll have to be very strategic on kind of what we get after, and it will definitely be seasonally based when, weeds are at their most prevalent time, and then, because there's a couple seasons for weeds during the year, so.
And how well do you think we can manage the weed problem with the 3-month option? Do you have concerns with that?
Well, if we went that route, I would definitely do this as kind of an experiment of sorts in which we would report back on. I mean, remember, with any contract that we have, we can always amend the contract, we can amend the scope of work, we can amend the price. So if we chose a lower option, we can all work together and review and how that option is working for the city, and then if it's not working well, we can come up with a different strategy.
Okay. I don't think we don't have the resources of Irvine or Laguna Niguel, but if we do a lower option, we can see how that works with the weeds. If we're in a good financial position 6 months or a year from now, we can afford more, we can do that, but I think I'm not comfortable with $250,000 a year for weeds right now.
Thank you. Councilmember Sanchez made a motion and there wasn't a second, so that motion dies for lack of a second. I have no real issue with the ITM. My concern is adding a $250,000 cost to the general fund at this time. We have a potential $1 million loss of revenues as related to us by the Treasurer's Office in regards to the bonds that Councilmember Kime just commented on. Adding this to that potential loss eliminates our entire surplus that was projected for this year. My concern is that we're prioritizing this over any other pending budget priority. We're essentially trading 2 police officers or resource centers or you name it for a pest management strategy. I would rather see the cost and the ITM come back to us as part of the budget process so we can compare and prioritize, is this a priority or are there other issues that we recognize are going to come forward as part of the budget process? So I'm going to make a motion that we approve a contract for the base contract, which is what we have today, and have the ITM and these costs come back to us as part of the budget process. Can I add to that? I think all of us on the dais want to move in the direction of option 1. I want to make that clear. I think that's very important. I think that's the route we want our city to go, but we have to have the resources of the grant funds to be able to cover those additional costs. There's other priorities. What I would like to potentially just suggest, it doesn't need to be a part of the motion, is, there's public areas that are more at risk toward these pesticides with children and families, on fields, for example. So maybe some of these areas can just focus on no pesticides on, more vulnerable areas. But again, I want to second Mayor Peter Wise's motion on coming back to us with a plan. We just want to make sure we can afford this. All of us want to move in the direction of option 1. We can't afford it at this time, and we're responsible to U.S. taxpayers to prioritize, public safety and on from there. Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. This is a high priority for the city, These are chemicals that are making our kids and our families sick. These are chemicals that cause cancer. And I don't want to wait for the state to tell us what we already know. And that is we have this responsibility to our children, to our families, that use these fields every day, 45 fields. This is a cost for maintaining the health of our children. And it is a high priority to me. So option one, I wanted to make sure is what I believe we ought to do. Option three is really what make our kids sick a little bit versus, more. That doesn't make sense to me. So I do not want to wait until the budget time. This is something that is time is of the essence. It's a ticking bomb for some of these kids.
There is a motion and a second. We still have lights on.
I think I still get 10 minutes.
Yeah, down to 2:45.
Yeah. I believe that this is not the end of this, that come November, we will be able to look at this again. I think that there are so many people that are not here that this matters to, and their families and the kids, and we are the ones who are supposed to be making these decisions. This is a high priority. So I'm very disappointed with my colleagues here on the dais. This is not, we spend so much money on other things that are not health related. We just spent money on an election that we didn't have to do for K, Measure K. We waste so much money. We wasted money on the extension of on the Melrose extension. I think that was in the order of $90,000. So every day we have these inequities here at the dais, and this is something that we all ought to be able to hold hands and say, this is important to the health of our children. We ought to be saying yes. Thank you.
I would just like to say that we have a budget workshop in just a little over a month, so we've waited a year to get this point. I think another month isn't going to make a difference. Councilmember Kine?
I heard a lot of hyperbole. Option three is not make our children a little less sick. It's just looking at more weeds. And that's what it really comes down to. So it's disappointing to hear that and point out that some of your colleagues